everyone, this is April, or Miss Harrison, and my digital unit plan goes into figurative language specifically and creative short story writing, which I'm very excited to introduce. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. So this whole digital unit plan is surrounded by the final assessment of a short story gallery walk. And the theme of it is more spooky or frightening, specifically because I made it be around Halloween. This was just so that, one, I could introduce important topics like figurative language early on in the school year, but also just to have a fun and engaging way for students to relate to their work through using a holiday like Halloween. And I have the summary right here, but first, I'm just going to go into the big ideas, objectives, and standards that my digital unit plan meets. So the big ideas, I want my students to be able to learn and review figurative language devices, and I want them to understand mainly how figurative language affects the meaning or tone of a text. And the way I'm going to have students do this is that they're going to be analyzing different passages from 3 short stories, The Yellow Wallpaper, The Lottery, and the Story of an Hour. And they're going to be doing this in group work, but the main idea is that students will be able to understand figurative language devices and what it does to a text. And like I already said, they're going to collaborate with their peers and find examples, and then I want them to find their own voice, and using the inspiration from the stories and the graphic organizer assessment that I'm going to give them, I want them to find inspiration to create their own short story. And since it is around Halloween, I've focused the short stories so that the main objective of the short story is that students have to talk about a time that they felt fear. And I thought that this would be a good way to keep students engaged with the work. Kind of scary stories is a notoriously known thing for students or just kids to like in general. But also I just wanted to try to make it as simple and straightforward as possible, such as giving them just one objective to reach. And I want them to understand the different platforms or digital platforms that they can use. So they're going to write their stories on Microsoft Word, and also for the gallery walk, I'm going to have them record on devices, maybe a laptop, their phone, etc., their favorite part of their story. This is both to have them encourage and take ownership of their writing, but also to help them practice different technology devices such as recording. And it says designing posters, but more specifically, I have an assignment where they are going to make their own cover art. And this is also just to go more in depth with them taking ownership of their writing. I really want to encourage my students to be authors in this unit plan, so I thought cover art would be perfect for that. And then they're going to be presenting their work in an interesting way through a gallery walk. More specifically, the learning objectives that they're going to reach. They're going to read, comprehend, and analyze short passages in the short stories I mentioned. They're going to speak amongst their peers and summarize their findings. They're going to use I haven't talked about this yet. So for the graphic organizer, which I'm going to go more in depth with, I decided to have it be more civically engaged with the students' community by them reaching out to an older adult, specifically someone over 50, cannot be a parent or school related, so it can't be me or any other teachers, but for them to reach out to somebody in the community and to ask them a time that they felt fear. So this will have them practice interviewing skills, but also it'll just have them be more active in their community and just listen and talk amongst people who may want to share a story. And more often or not, older people or the elderly really do want to pass on knowledge to younger kids. So I thought that this would just be a great way for students to be actively involved in their community. And I'll go more in depth with that in a moment. But yeah, they're going to be doing a self-conducted interview, and this is all to help them brainstorm for their own story. And then I want them to take ownership of their work. I want them to take what they know about figurative language and figurative concepts and how it connects to the audience through their short story. And yeah, I just want them to be prepared for the gallery walk overall. And My digital unit plan actually meets a lot of standards. I'm not going to go too in depth with it, but it specifically meets standards in reading standards for literature, writing standards, and speaking and listening standards. And yeah, I'm really proud of the fact that it goes through so many different standards. So yeah, I'm just going to go to the assessments because I made a pretty cool timeline that I think will overview my whole digital unit plan pretty nicely. Oh yeah, just to let you know, this website that I use this timeline on, VisMe, right down here, it's free. It's free to sign up for, and yeah, it offered many different templates for a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be timelines, but this timeline's really cool. It was pretty simple to use, so I recommend using that. But yeah, to go on more about my digital unit plan, as you can see, I titled this one Spooky Short Story Gallery Walk. It's all the same. So I'm going to have my students be interested in this digital unit plan, hopefully through a hook where I can relate it to more pop culture examples. And then I have my Prezi presentation and the notes done in pairs, which I've kind of gone over. They're going to review figurative language in this section, and they're going to work with a partner and identify figurative language in different passages in the short stories I already mentioned. Then there's going to be a quiz. I made a quiz, and it's offered down below. And it's just a quick 12 multiple choice quiz that focuses on figurative language vocabulary, just so that I can know if my students are on track with it, and if they aren't on track with figurative language or if they're not understanding it that well, then I can go back and I can get to these different assessments later on. And yeah, the graphic organizer and interview is a double journal entry, and I'm pretty proud of it. I'm going to go more in depth with it in a little bit. I'll show you it later on. But basically on the left side, they do what I already mentioned. They go out in the community, they find somebody to interview, and then they take notes from that interview in that side of the journal entry. And then on the right side is just a complete brainstorming side. So they don't, it's no longer tied to the interview, but they use inspiration from the left side or from the interview, and they just fill out different plot points, like the rising action, climax, etc., of what they think their short story will follow. And then they will also list 3 different figurative devices that they think they'll use in their short story. And this is just to have them thinking about what they want to write about. Zero pressure about turning in like paragraphs or anything, but I want them to start thinking about what they want to write about. And hopefully through the interview, they'll be excited to brainstorm about their own time that they felt fear, and they'll be excited to write about it. That's the end goal anyways. And then for the cover art, like I said, I'm going to show this to you when I go into the lesson tabs above. But the cover art, they just use an iPad app called Pinzo, which is also free and really easy to use. And they make their own cover art, and they write a short but descriptive summary of their work. And by this point, they should have their first draft kind of in progress. And then after they turn in their cover art, maybe a week later, their first draft will be due, and I'll be able to progress check it. My goal is to do it individually, but we'll just see how it goes. If obviously I need to review with the class more about figurative language in the beginning, I'll probably have to change editing or looking at first drafts individually, but that just kind of depends on the progress of the class. And then after that, their final draft of their short story is due, and I'm just going to make sure it's due before the gallery walk because I want all students to come prepared. And then finally, the final assessment would be the short story gallery walk, which I'm very excited about. Like I mentioned, it's a 2-day time period. And yeah, I have all the descriptions here a little bit more. The quiz and the short story rubric are below, but I'm going to let you maybe look at those on your own time. Quickly, just unit resources that I provided. As you may notice, this is a different color background. That's just because these are all links and they wouldn't show up properly with the normal color I have in the background, so I just made it darker. We have some interesting photos down below. Yeah, we just have some resources about figurative language, specifically how to write creatively, and different gallery walk resources. And I'm not going to click on it, but the tab English with Miss H is our teacher website, which I also encourage you to check out. Pretty proud of it. And then, just to make it easy and acceptable, I just mainly put buttons on the lesson tabs. Really easy to click on. But this is my presentation, my Prezi presentation. It's loading, but I'm pretty proud of it. This is the first Prezi presentation I've ever made, and it was pretty easy, I think. Yeah, just letting it load. Hopefully you guys are liking my digital unit plan so far. I hope so. Well, this is taking a little too long to load, but basically in it, oh, okay, there you go. So just for the lesson, just vocab review, as you can see, and then I'm not going to go into them, but the yellow wallpaper, the story of an hour, and the lottery each have different passages that I want students to review in pairs. And then for homework, I'm actually going to have students pick one of these 3 short stories to read, and they're going to identify on their own different examples of figurative language and bring it to class so that I can see it. And this is just so that I can progress check and see their understanding of it. And yeah. Oh, so I don't know if I explained this before. So even though lesson 2 says that it's an iPad activity, which is the cover art, I decided to make lesson 3 go after the Prezi presentation, just because it made sense with the sequence of my digital unit plan. And this is where students are going to go out and interview somebody and fill out their graphic organizer. I'm not going to show you the rubric, but I'm just going to point out to you the my example that I made for the graphic organizer, just so that you could see it a little bit more in depth. It's loading, but I just made up my own stories, but on the left side it's just details of somebody that I interviewed, and on the right side it's my own example. And I'm really happy with how my example turned out, because most of the time students would assume that a spooky or a spooky short story or a time that they felt fear is like a ghost story. And although I do encourage students, if they want to share a type of ghost story or a really scary story, they can. But if they want to share a more realistic time that they felt fear, I'm just not going to show you this, but just believe me, it's a pretty good example. I wanted to show students the option that a time that they felt fear could mean more than just a ghost story. It could be a time that somebody got sick in the family and they felt fear, or even if they went to the dentist office and that was really scary. And one of the cool things about figurative language is a figurative device is a hyperbole, which is already means exaggerating something. So a student could exaggerate a whole story if they want, and they could argue that their whole story is a hyperbole, which would count as a figurative device. But I don't know if I'd share that with my students or not, but I would definitely accept it if one of my students came up with it. And then just because everything's taking a while to load, I made a cover art myself with the Pinso app, and the directions are also in the Word doc. But basically I just asked students to, after they've already brainstormed about what their story is going to be about, I wanted them to choose one symbol from their story and have that in their cover art, along with different descriptive words in it and a mock critic review that uses a figurative device. I think in my example, I used something like Miss Harrison's story makes the pages scream, which would be personification. And yeah, I think that that's a pretty fun assignment because it's a little creative. It doesn't really involve writing, although there is a brief summary that I want my students to use on the back of their cover art. But it's mainly an assignment that will get students excited about finishing their short stories, but won't be too stressful. And then yeah, I just have my template here and all my goals, my summary, and my assessments. And at the very end, students will bring their cover art that has already been graded, will bring a copy of their short story and a digital recording of their favorite part, and they will just have the opportunity to share with their students what they've been working on. And I will be able to walk around, and I won't be grading the presentations harshly at all. Just as long as students bring everything and are excited to share, that's all I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, that's my digital unit plan, and I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it's inspired you to do